on January 27th. I'd like to call the ad hoc Bluffton Growth Committee meeting to order. Joining us today, we have Mayor Lisa Solka, representatives from the town of Bluffton, Heather Colin, I believe is how you say it. We also have committee members Angela Middleton and Dr. Tina Guads, and staff members from the district, Robert Otting and Carol Crutchfield. So can we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
We also have Stephen. Can we identify Stephen or Stefan?
Is that Stephen from, is that the town manager? Maybe.
Yes, he might be muted.
Yes, it's me.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us. Nice to have you.
Of course, glad to be here.
So let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Robin, can you bring up the virtual flag for us?
Sorry, I had to go open the door.
No worries.
Okay. Where are we?
Pledge of Allegiance, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Just need the flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item B is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda for today.
I'll second it.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Ms. Wilson and seconded by Dr. Guads. Any comments on the agenda? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Robin, do we have any public comments today?
No, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay, the next item is item D, the approval of the November 22nd, 2021 committee.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the November 22nd, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I'm going to abstain because I wasn't a committee member then, although I did attend the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we do have a little swap there of committee members now with Dr. Guads joining us, which is great. She's a Bluffton representative, and Colonel Geyer has gone on to other committees. So if there is no other further discussion, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion passes. And next up for the main event for today's meeting, we have item E, which is the discussion with Heather Colin, the Assistant Town Manager with the Town of Bluffton. She has a great report for us. We also have the Mayor and Town Manager with us today to assist with answering any questions we might have at the committee level. So I am going to let you guys take the wheel there on the report. And I'm just going to ask, I'm on hotel Wi-Fi. And so I can't get it to pull up on my computer here, but Robin, if you could just stay diligent like you always do and going through, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So Heather, you can go ahead and update everybody on this great presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you all, I haven't shared multiple screens in a while. Do you see Bluffton, Heart of the Low Country, just my, okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you all have heard this presentation in the past, just updated numbers. So basically just kind of a snapshot of the development we've been seeing, permit trends and things like that. So if stop me at any time or, happy to answer any questions, and Mayor Solka and Town Manager Stephen Cease are on too. So please jump in. Let's see. There we go. So again, this is just a snapshot of what we are, how big, how we've grown. Still don't have specific census numbers for the breakdown, but this again just shows our median age 37 and a half. So probably lots of families with children, and affects the schools related to this presentation, but again, just where we're at, 54 square miles, had a couple of small annexations, but still about 54 square miles, and still 92% of that land is all within development agreement.
I'm only seeing the Bluffton hard.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, Heather,
Okay,
you hadn't moved the slides.
let me
You
move
didn't
it.
slide code.
Not on this screen, but let me try. Let's do. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. All right, let me stop it and pull it back up.
No problem.
I knew it was too good to be true to work the first time. All right, heart of the Low Country.
Yes,
For the
ma'am.
growth
Yes.
map. All right, I'm just going to manually go through this. All right, can you see
There
it
you
now? All right, I'm just going to manually go through it, so I'm not going to. Okay, so like I said, 54 square miles, 92% still within development agreements. So all of that's planned. We know what those numbers are going to be, minus some amendments approved by town council along the way. You've seen this slide before. This shows how we've grown. So you can see the pink, that bright pink area, Palmetto Bluff, back in 2000, continuing on with Buckwalter area. This right over here is Old Town, to give you kind of perspective. And you can see the addition as that pink continues to grow over the years. This is our last, most recent annexation, a little piece here, St. Gregory the Great tract. So this is where we are now. We do get a lot of questions, those donut holes, that the white areas are unincorporated Beaufort County. So sometimes people think I live in Bluffton, they live in the Bluffton region, but there is this handy tool on our website that you can put in your address and it'll tell you if you are within the town limits or not. The 92% of the land, this is all the land that's located within a development agreement. So all of this orange, this gray is what is more traditional zoning. So the historic district, residential general district, things like that. So this here outlines all of the development agreements. So we have Bluffton Village, Buckwalter, Jones Estate, Palmetto Bluff, the Schultz Tract, which is the Bluffton Park area, Village at Verdier, which is Seagrass Station area, New Riverside. So this outlines all of that information. So how big it is, the residential dwelling units, the commercial area, as well as the public dedication. So this is what was initially approved. So many of the agreements have public dedication. So it could be areas for school. So could be parks, could be right of way. So all of that is outlined here. So that's a clear agreement or clear agreement when everything was zoned. This here is a snapshot of where we are today with the development agreements, and we separate it out by residential and commercial, or non-residential, because that could be office, that could be civic, things like that. So each of those districts or development agreement areas that I stated are listed with a different color. So we did an average build out. So you see Bluffton Village, which is 78% build out, Palmetto Bluff, only 18% between residential and non-residential. Bluffton Village, 84%, Palmetto Bluff, 29%. And with that, what I will say is that although Bluffton Village is at 84% and they have remaining units, it may not be realistic that those units are ever built. So but they're still out there floating. It could be used. It's essentially a commodity. There's options where they can be transferred. All of that does take approval by town council. So if they do ask for any changes, that does have to happen. You'll see here, Village at Verdier, Seagrass Station, 98% build out. From our conversations with them, it's not realistic that those units that are still out there will ever be built. However, they're still there. So technically they exist in float. But overall, we're about 52% build out. And I will also say it can get a little bit complicated in that when we talk about build out, that could be, you may not actually see a house built, but it may be an approved subdivision. So staff refers to that as it's used. There's going to be houses, Four Seasons, there's Cypress Ridge over there at New Riverside. All of those are utilized units. Even though you may not see a house built there, there's a subdivision, there's a lot, and a house will come. This here's all the numbers for each of those agreements that I just outlined. So we do the build out percentage as well as that utilize units. Again, it gets a little bit complicated, but we try to paint the picture as far as what's coming and what's already used versus what's built. And you'll see the building permits here. There's also units that are retired, so to speak, or transferred to the development rights bank that could be used for affordable housing. They could be transferred. So they're not necessarily retired or expired, but they're kind of pushed to the side, like a savings bank, so to speak, of development rights. So those are units too that are there, but they're not likely to be built. And if they are going to be built, again, it takes town council action to pull them out of the bank. And that you'll see right here. So what we try to do, again, there's all those numbers as far as number of units, but what's realistic? How does that line up with population? So our population right now, based on the last census, is a little bit over 27,000. Equating that to housing units, we're at a little bit over 11,000, according to the census. We match that up with the development agreement summary is a little bit higher than that. However, there's all the other things that make Bluffton unique in that this doesn't account for, say, second homes, retiree homes. They're all considered a housing unit, but they may not equate in that population category, and they may not have children in schools or use those same services. We also have retirement communities and age-restricted communities. We have the Haven, and we have Four Seasons at Cypress Ridge, who right now are marketing, and their business plan is for 55 and over. It's a home, so it's considered a dwelling unit. There's no differentiation, again, because it's their business model, not necessarily something we regulate, but we do try to keep track of that as well, because again, they have different needs, different pressures on the infrastructure. And this here shows you how many units we're talking about. So it's a little bit over 900, 914 right now. Also, community in Palmetto Bluff, that's specifically, targeted for that 55 and over age group. Again, doesn't mean that may not change in the future if their business model changes, but right now it accounts to almost 1,000 units. Going through some more, every month we present a report to town council in the consent agenda. So if you ever want to look at it every month, it's updated monthly. Lots of information and statistics and numbers in there, but one that I thought would be helpful is building permits. This is building permits. So once they decide they're going to build a home, and that permit can stay active for a period of time. So again, you may not, there's another statistic with certificate of occupancy, which means it's ready to be moved in. But this kind of just shows you where we're at in terms of building permits. And new single family is this blue right here. So we're still seeing a lot of new single family. However, again, as we become more build out, eventually that'll probably switch from new building permits to renovations and additions and other things. This here is another one that I thought would be of interest to the school district because this shows it broken down by neighborhood. I know the text is kind of hard to see on the bottom here, but we also follow how many building permits are issued for each neighborhood. So you can, match that up to the map. So you'll see that Four Seasons here, like I just talked about, they have 55 units in the past year and a half. So you can see that they're building quite a bit. Mill Creek still has a lot of units. No surprise. Jones Tract area over there near New Riverside, again, building quite a bit, as well as Palmetto Bluff. So, and then Palmetto Bluff, like I said, it could be many second homes, homes without children. But again, you can't necessarily assume that. So this just shows where all that activity is, all that development activity is taking place. So some of these things that I know, we're updating our comprehensive plan that's getting ready to go to town council for workshop in April. And I know we've been talking about this for a while and trying to help, but one thing I know as we look at the map and areas and the project sheets that you all have is where are new schools envisioned to be constructed? How can we help with that? Either give you the information on where they could be built or what would meet your needs. You know, so what are your parameters? How much land? What are some of those things that you need as far as locating any of your new facilities or additions to your facilities? And then two, I showed you those donut holes. We don't have the information for all those little donut hole areas that are in unincorporated Beaufort County, but how does their development and their permits and things like that coincide with the town? So is it the same? Is it slower? Is it faster? Is it a different product? So how does that come into play and have an effect on this? And then just in general, what can we do to help and how can we coordinate? You know, COVID, obviously, everybody keeps talking about COVID. I'm so tired of talking about it. However, it has changed everything. Used to get together and talk more with our development review committee meetings. With the school district, I believe y'all still do get our agendas, and we try to stay in touch and talk as projects move forward. So we try to continue to communicate. I don't know as if now over the past year or two, we see ways that we need to change that. As far as, again, how we can work together and make sure at least we have the information as soon as we can, as soon as we know it's out there to better plan. So those are just some things that we try to keep track of. And again, the same with the data as far as being able to pull out those age restricted communities, map it out better, but what information can we track to better help you all? Some other things that I do always like to, and I'm again happy to answer questions, but always like to add to the presentations are, we have a interactive permits map on the town's website under the map gallery. And you'll see here, these little blue flags. This is an older map just meant to show you what we have. You can click on each one of these flags. And if I was really tech savvy, I could do it for you now, but I'm afraid I'd lose my presentation. So you can click on these little blue flags and that actually pulls you into our permitting software. So you see what I see, what they put in the system. So you'll see who the applicant is and a description of what it is they're requesting. So if you see activity, you know, along May River Road and it's after hours and you just can't get a hold of town staff and just feel like checking it out, you can click on that blue flag and get all sorts of information. And you can even drill down even deeper and see when they had their last inspections and whether it passed or failed. So it's just a really handy tool I always like to make sure everybody is aware of. And then obviously where you can find us. I know Carol knows where to find me. Robert knows where to find me. We're here. But just all of the information. We try to, like I said, we try to get as much information out to the public as we can, because I know everybody, myself included, wants to know what's going on. So that's just kind of a screenshot and a snippet of where we're at in terms of numbers. I know I don't expect anybody to remember any of those numbers I showed, but I can get this presentation to you all so that you have it if you don't already. And if you want me to go back to any slides, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then Marisolka or Stephen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I would go back to that building permit graph. There were two graphs I think they need to really look at to ask questions for purposes of planning. That one. This was the one I was talking to Dr. Watts last month, which again, Beaufort County doesn't have a permit site like we do. We don't know what Beaufort County has permitted, so we can only judge for the town. But the good in all of this, if you see from 17 down, we are declining a great bit between 18, 19, and 20. And like council has discussed, we're interested in 21 versus 22 because we really think 21 was kind of a knee-jerk anomaly. But, you know, it's not going to go up because we just have less to be permitted. I think 72%, there is a percentage of units that will never be used unless some horrible catastrophe comes in and wipes out everything and we rebuild. But that's where I was headed on the building permits. Let's just be smart, knowing we are kind of at a tipping point going down, at least for the town of Bluffton. So I just didn't want everyone nervous over a 50-some% built out when it's not. Commercial isn't going to impact the schools other than hopefully there's people who will give us some money. But the residential, I think, is what y'all need to look at, and that's the 72% build out. That was all I had to say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there anybody else with any questions? I did want to see if Carol or Robert wanted to speak to the consideration slide where it indicated how much land was needed. I don't know if we wanted to answer that question or provide them maybe with some guidance on that. I know it's different depending on the grade levels.
And William's hands up when you get a moment.
Okay.
Well, before he talks, Rachel, that's something that council's been really questioning since the presentation last month with this new impact fee the county and the school district's talking about. Mainly, number one and two are very important. Like, where are they going to be built? Heather didn't mention it, but I will. May River is probably over the number that they're required to have. There's a number that is in the development agreement that May River High School cannot go over, and I think it's 1,400, and I think we've surpassed that. So that's an issue I think we've got to look at now, because past superintendents have talked about pre-K to 8 in the May River area and other schools. So that's another consideration I think for everyone to consider. So I'm done.
Thank you. Carol,
If
sorry.
I could just, I thank you for bringing that up. It's 1,800 students is the maximum number of students on that land, that campus.
in the development agreement?
Correct.
High school, any school period, not just one school. It's all schools combined that would be there, right,
Correct.
Heather?
Correct.
So if there was to be a K-8 facility built in the May River area where the high school is, it's 1,800 for all facilities that are in that area.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I believe that was really even a part of the purchase of the property when that property was transferred to the school district. And again, I know things can always be changed or, considered for changes, but that's at least what we have right now for that property.
And I'd add on to what Heather and the mayor said with property. Because we were talking about this morning, is all of our large properties are about done with development plans. So the ones that we have coming in, if we have an idea of what the school's looking for, that will be beneficial to us, so that as we deal with the developers and we talk about the public uses and the stuff like that, we can keep that in mind and make sure that we're working to help the school district identify what they need moving forward.
Thank you for that. Before I call on Dr. Gwads or Mr. Smith, Carol or Robert, can you tell Heather and Stephen what the approximate acreage is that's needed for each of those different grade levels?
Carol, if it's okay, I'll just jump in here real quick.
Go ahead.
I first would just like to thank the town of Bluffton for the partnership we've always had in working together to solve a lot of these problems. Second, we may need to get with you in the regards to the May River property, because that was renegotiated as far as our contract with Crescent Properties. So I'm not sure if that made it through the town of Bluffton, but our negotiations with, I believe it was Crescent Properties at the time, was renegotiated, which did allow us to move up to 1,800 and add additional schools to the property. So Heather, we need to probably talk on that. And then the general, what OSF set as the general acreage, that we're looking for. Typically, you're talking a high school is 50 acres or more. You're talking a middle school, you're in the 25 acres to say 35. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then elementary, you're in the 15 to 25 acres. And so one of the things, as far as the availability of those size properties within the Bluffton area, there are very, very, very few. And we have a land consultant on board that is looking into that. The one thing that really has me interested are all these properties you're saying that may not get developed, and whether or not they have use and whether they could be converted to, say, a school property within these development agreements if there is no plan to develop them. That is something we'd be very interested in, and would like to get our land consultant to meet with you and talk about those. So if there are any opportunities there.
Well, and actually, I may have misspoke or clarify that. When we say it can't be built, it's not necessarily the land, it's the number of units. So when the land, you have the land and then you have units that you can transfer in. So the land just could not support, for example, Bluffton Park has has units left. However, when we look at the approved subdivisions and the land and the way it's all laid out, there's nowhere that they really could go. You can always kind of go up, but it's not realistic. So when I say it's unlikely that it's built, it's just because the land cannot support it, all the units and the numbers that were tied to it initially. I mean, there may be some areas, which, we kind of, like Stephen said, we continue to kind of explore and try to brainstorm and just guess where it could, not guess, but, an educated, guess, so to speak, it was where they could go. But those units that I'm talking about are really just kind of floating out there. There's just nowhere to put them. If that helps.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I'll call on you now. Mr. Smith, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was going to ask, can I get a copy of that presentation?
Yeah, I think it's in board docs also, but Heather, if you don't mind emailing that to us, that'd be wonderful.
It's not in board docs yet, but Heather was going to send it to me, and then I will place it in board docs once I receive it.
Yeah, I'll send you a OneDrive link because the file is pretty large. So
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And then thank you for that presentation. Thank you.
of course.
Oh, and also I was going to say thank also the Mayor Sokol for zooming into that information, because actually that was one of my questions, and she had already answered it. Thank you.
Dr. Glatz?
Yeah, thank you to the town of Bluffton representatives here, the mayor, Heather, and Stephen. And thank you for your presentation, Heather. Can you go back to the slide that the mayor commented about, is the building permits? Okay, so I think one thing that seemed to be misleading at the Bluffton Town Council meeting, and I don't think it was purposeful by anyone, and I'm not saying it was, I don't think it was, the town nor the district, was that these, that permits for new buildings directly correlates with students in our schools. Well, it probably does. That's probably true. However, it leaves out all the resales. Now, because resales certainly can have children coming into them. And I think that's something we must remember, especially, we know there's been a huge migration here to this area during the pandemic, especially from the Northeast. So, and they're not all necessarily building new homes, but certainly some of them have children. So I just think, we don't want to just hang our hat that if the single family, multifamily residential permits in the last, they went up between 20 and 21, it looks like. And we don't even have, obviously, 22. We're at the beginning of 22. So I'm not sure how we can definitely say that the trend is downward when we know the pandemic hit at the end of 19. So it's not surprising not a lot of residential permits were issued in 2020. I think we're making assumptions that are not necessarily accurate. And I'm sure the people that are on this call or meeting obviously realize school impact fees that the Board of Education voted unanimously to go forward with are only applied to new residential buildings and typically are applied at the time of the permit. So I just want to say that because I think I don't want there to be there seems to be a little bit of, I don't want to say misinformation. That's a little harsh. Maybe, I don't know. I think it needs to be looked at in a broader perspective than just, the children coming to our schools is based on new building permits. I don't think that's accurate.
But Tina, on that, and the age may be different, but usually family, 2-story, 5-bedroom homes have a family, and if they move, the family is like a replacement. So I think there's some kind of value to put on that. Maybe you see an uptick in maybe an older family leaves because the kids have now gone to college, but they've gone through the school system, but then a new family comes in. We're just trying to make sense of what's the right thing to do. And with you, I believe growth should pay for growth. I don't need new schools personally, but the new people moving in, most of them do. My 2021 number, I'd love to know how many of those were the age restricted. 66, do we know, are those SORA, and how many are 4 seasons? But it does give you a basis to see. We have a certain number of rooftops that we can build where they say 72% of that number has been built and approved. That leaves 28%, if we're exact, of yet to go. So we're not flipped. That's what I'm just trying to say. We're kind of at a tipping point, not back when it was 2005. We kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, was my statement on that.
Yeah, and could I please respond?
Go ahead.
Chair, yeah, just go back to that slide, please. And I just think we really have to remember, okay, yes, the growth has ramped up since we don't have 2005 on this slide, but clearly on this slide, 2010 to 18, and then 19, 20 was the huge drop off, but we've got an explanation for that. We've got the pandemic. So I just think that's something that has to be taken into consideration. We don't really have enough of a graph. 2021. What's the trend going to be now? You can't really tell this, and I acknowledge that. Obviously, if the more that's built out, this as time goes on, there can't be as many permits issued because it's just not the availability. Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing, if I can, this is Stephen. We just completed a community survey. We had a group do it for us. The results came back with the number of the percentage of people that have a child under the age of 18 in the household was about 45% of households in the town. I think it was 43, 45, something like that. I'll find the presentation slide and I'll share that. Get Heather to share that with the PowerPoint.
Stephen,
And you had asked about the numbers. It looks like it's for 2021 building permit data. 55 of those were age restricted. Those were from 4 seasons. And I don't have the SORA Wellness Center because that's combined with Palmetto Bluff, but it could be as much as 66. So it's between 55 and 121 of that 858 are age restricted.
Sorry, Stephen, where would we be able to find the survey results? I'm just interested to know how many respondents there were. And
So we did a statistically significant survey. They did 400, and that got them to 95% statistically significant. And they did them random. We did a presentation from the consultant. It was at our January work session, and you can go on and pull the entire presentation and hear his comments as well. But we'll be putting the survey on the website or somewhere here soon. We just are getting the final data from them as well as all the comments and all that were the backup documentation.
thank you for that. My apologies, Ms. Crutchfield. I see you have your hand raised.
That's okay. I was just gonna chime in and kind of talk about how we determine what facility needs are in terms of growth. So while we're talking about building permits as being correlated or a factor to growth, yes, it is. It's one piece of information, but that is not how we determine what we think our needs are going to be for facilities and student growth. So we just put out our facilities master plan, and in the demographic section, it goes into great detail about how we calculate projections. And so it takes a look at neighborhoods and how they are trending. So to Dr. Glotz's point about turnover in homes and what changes, we're tracking that, and that goes into the model that calculates our projections by looking at cohort survivals, how many kids are in that neighborhood from one year that are there the next year at the next grade up. So building permits is a factor in that, because all of a sudden, if you're seeing a new housing development, there's a whole new section that suddenly got growth. And so that's sort of calculated into that model in that methodology. So again, it's not, building permits are not how we decide if we need new schools. We have a model that takes that into consideration in that way by looking at what actually shows up in terms of real students here on the ground. Because to the point, it could be 55 and up homes. So you can't just take that number and say, oh, look at all the building permits we're growing, not necessarily for students. So we look at our student growth differently. And I just wanted to kind of bring that point all in together.
Thank you, Carol. And I was going to mention too, those facilities plan books that I believe you said at our last meeting, the date of when they were going to be printed. And I know that in the past we did give and distribute copies of those to our local elected officials. So there will be some coming to town council and whatnot. I just don't think they're back from the printer yet.
They're not. We expect them back sometime mid-February. We know that we should have them for your 1st of March meeting. But in digital form, we should be able to put it out on our website. I think it's in board docs, Robin, if I'm not. I think
The draft is that you.
Yes, well, that's what's going to the printer. We just need to take draft off that title. It's the final version. Yep.
Okay. We'll make sure we get you guys a copy of that and get the links over to you guys
Yes.
as well.
Yes. And I want to do a kudos shout out. Heather talked about the permit finder map. Ryan, who does all your mapping for the town, I know he's got a team now, but that map is so helpful because I do get phone calls about, hey, what's that development? And I go straight to the map and pull it up and can find all the information. So just want to point that out. It is extremely helpful to know what's going on.
But let's see if the county would buy it from us. We'll change
Yes, that would be great.
the same questions, and poor Heather's tired of me asking, but truly, it's hard to get a feel of the whole county when we don't know, what most of it has planned. One thing, Carol, and I know you've been very on top of it over the years since, all of our kids went to one school, but they're under that consideration. I think there should be another one. How can you help us? We really are listening to you. I do put a lot of weight on building permits because, for instance, and the ask for the annexation on that same night y'all were there of 100 acres that should only have 30 homes. They wanted to build 100. We said, no, we're not interested, but I think we need your help to say, no, we're not interested either. So, how we can help each other in managing this growth would be really wonderful on both sides. Us help you and then you help us in return on really what can you say? I know you have to educate every child that walks in the door, but sometimes enough's enough and we need to hear it from our partners.
Well, and there was a time I think we did come to some of the development review committees and talk about the fact that we had no mechanism and no money to build new schools. So if something were to go forward, kind of these were the consequences. So, if that's
Here we-
something you're asking us to do again, then, we can have
I've lived through a council's when it was just in a pre-U, but, a blanket letter, no real stance. And here we are. Here we are in this mess now because, 20 years ago, who would have known? But anyway, I'm just glad we all work well together and hopefully we're on the same page and the same goals.
Dr. Glatz?
Yes, thank you. I have a question and then some comments. So the question is, Stephen, you mentioned that I think it was low 40% of the home of the residences in Bluffton have children under age 18. What does Hilton Head have? I mean, can you put that in perspective?
I cannot. Our survey did not include them. So I can't tell you what Hilton Head had.
Okay.
I apologize. But we
that's
just did a survey of our community and we asked about 45 questions, and a lot of them we were just trying to gauge the direction of the town, concerns the citizens had, how our services were doing. And there were a couple other questions we asked just to really get some demographic info about our citizens. And that was one of the questions we asked, is what percentage had children under 18 in the household.
Okay. Thank you.
And if it's of any use, I can, when I send the OneDrive link, I can send the presentation that the consultants gave at our last council meeting on that survey.
Yeah. So just a couple comments that, another thing, with the growth, we're talking here about, what's annexed into the town of Bluffton. And then we've got, of course, the unincorporated areas, Beaufort County, that are kind of considered part of Bluffton. I personally live in one of those areas. So they have approved the impact fees, and yet all these children, whether they're coming from, what's annexed into the town of Bluffton or what is part of town of Bluffton, or they live in an unincorporated area, they're all going to benefit from the same facilities. I think that's important to remember. And another thing is, several of us, Mayor Solka, Carol, myself, our children all benefited from the Bluffton Public Schools. And yes, they're now adults. However, I still feel as a citizen that I will definitely benefit from high quality schools. These children are our workforce. These are the children that are going to be out in the community, making our community better, whether they're the policemen, the firemen, own the dry cleaners, whatever it is, they're going to, be of benefit. And I think that's important to remember too, with the age 55 and over communities. Okay, no, they don't have children in our schools, but yes, they directly benefit from our schools. And Heather, if we take your numbers of somewhere between 50 and 100 permits in 2021 of that 858, well, that's less than 9%. So it's not a, huge amount either. I mean, and maybe it will be different next year, who knows? But I do think we have to think of it as a benefit to all. And that's my comments.
Thank you. Robert?
Well, I was just going to ask, Heather, can you explain what the difference is between permitted and built? So when you're giving these percentages as permitted, does that mean they're actually built?
Not necessarily. So we track two. So we track, permitted means they've pulled their building permit. A building permit stays good for a period of time, and you can get extensions, or it could be under construction. So permitted simply means that they've paid their fees, they've submitted their plans, they're approved, they could start work tomorrow, provided they meet the inspections. Built is what we track with certificate of occupancy. So that means that it is all constructed, the building inspector is given his final sign off, and it's ready to move in. So those are two separate things that we track.
Well, how do they relate, or do they go
They do
together?
relate. Yes and no. Over time they do. So I would say your COs should always be less than your building permits. However, not necessarily, because it could cross different years. So it depends on what numbers you're looking at. obviously you can't get a CO unless you've applied for a building permit and received the building permit. So it's just building permits. Typically, you know, the turnaround time for a track built home that's more of a production, the same model with a little tweaks, is going to be faster than the custom homes. Just because of timing, you know, even just inspections and things like that. So, you know, we've heard turnaround times anywhere from 6 to 8 months for construction of a house. So, and Mayor, you may know better what the current time frame is, but it just all depends. COs is probably more the realistic. They're ready to move in. They can go.
I don't know if Heather would help. I think for planning purposes, you can, you know, and if you did it monthly, the building permit today pulled is someone that's ready to start building. They're 12 to 18 months out, mainly from just getting the goods here, but they're ready to start construction. But I think for planning purposes where you know, I don't know how you add another column, but say this year, part of that is a pulled permit. How many have pulled permits and then how many are COs? At least you have some kind of trend in a year from now, what it's going to be, even though it's going to continue. Because I think we're 18 months out.
And we do have that in our monthly report. We do track the COs.
I saw that.
So I guess what I was getting, what is the percentage COs for Bluffton for residential?
The percentage COs for the build out and development agreements. That's a great question. I'd have to look back at that.
Yeah, that would be a good column actually for school district. I don't know if anyone else would need it.
But we should be able to do that relatively easy.
Kind of along that same line of thinking, sorry, I just jumped in. I love that you all do this tracking. I mean, it's amazing. I wish every municipality did and the county as well. But since we know what has been permitted for total residential and you're tracking, you know, where we are at build out, do you ever kind of look at it in terms of a projection of when you think they might reach that total build out? And I know that's, you know, it's a crystal ball kind of thing, but you know, have you done it?
I don't know if Heather's typing or not, but you know, Carol, that's what I look at this at. You know, we say you've got to figure these developers came to us years ago and they asked for the world. Well, then they realized with stormwater and wetlands and trees and space, you know, maybe they got Hampton Hall's a good example. They had 1,120 density residential units they could build. Well, at the build out, it was 900 and something. So they have like 70 units that are sitting somewhere that will never be built in that one development. So I take 10% off that number. And then I go backwards. I think we can easily, if we continue on this trend, I was always told, you know, at 2030, we're going to have 70,000 residents. Well, it's not proving to be that because so many units weren't utilized, but Heather can jump in. I think the rate we're going, it is going to be 2030. It is my very simple kind of figuring. But Heather, you can be more exact and professional in that.
Oh, that's fine. And the other thing with the development agreements, I was hoping it was on this table, but it's not. And we have this in the more expanded version of the development agreement summaries. All of the development agreements do have an expiration date. So there is a date that if they're not done and completely developed, or they haven't used, met their obligations, there are some next steps. What those are, I don't know. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but there is an expiration date. It's pretty far away, but not that far away, infinite future. So
I was thinking it was like 2035 or something like that.
I think so. I think some of them are 2032. Again,
Some of them got expanded a couple of years because of, or 2 or 3 years for the economic downturn.
Right. And actually the estimated for the build out for the population is 63,000 people. That's what the 2014 comp plan was based on. And that is a little bit over 63,000 people, but not until 2150. But we have all different projections. We try to figure out where we're at. And like I said, we'll have much more information. We'll be including you all. And please look out for all of the comprehensive plan steering committee meetings and focus groups. And we have, that's really about to kick up in the next couple months. So it'll be interesting to see what they've correlated as far as our projections and which one's right on track with that same level. But
you know, Carol, on your question too, we also know the census is not right. It's way low. I had a fella in Palmetto Bluff that really monitors this for me, and we were talking the other day. You know, if we're at 67,000, say, and we're 70% built out, that means we have 44,000 people here, not 28,000. And I've always felt we were always 10,000 shy. I don't know how that helps with planning, because it's just going to show you we're never really going to know until, you know, every last house is built. Then we go and try to figure it out. But 67,000, if half are going to be, and I don't know if 500, 400 people really give a good determination of our survey for how many children are in the household. But, you know, if 50% are going to be, you know, have children in the household, that's 30 some thousand people, and everyone has 2.5 children. I mean, you got to figure that out too. Somebody smarter than us can figure that out. I guess looking at that big map with Rob and everyone, I mean, I believe that this council is going to discuss. Now we know we have a 5-year break. We can come back to the table. I don't foresee us not voting for this, but I also know a lot can happen between now and February. But the question has always been, you get the money, you know, where are you going to build? Where are you going to go? Where can we help you? Where can we show you where there's surplus land? Should we really work on reprogramming places? And I mean, I just think there's a bigger discussion when this money starts coming in, because there are going to be a lot of questions on that.
That's a good question, Madam Mayor. We also are having a discussion after this one on the district's plans for dealing with the growth. So I think that we'll have kind of a clearer vision after we have that discussion and after they present their plan in the future to us. So hopefully that gives you guys some information to go on. I did see that Miss Middleton is also on. Miss Middleton, did you have any questions?
No questions, but I would like to thank Heather and Stephen and Mayor Soka for coming on and providing this information. It is eye-opening, just the growth itself. I'm a transplant here, so I've watched the growth from 2012 up until now, and I know Bluffton is growing exponentially. So thank you for the information and always keeping us up to date.
You're welcome.
And
I'm sorry, Rachel. I do think Bluffton needs to know about this renegotiating of May River, because that's kind of a game changer for a place to add on. So we need to all make sure we're all on the same page with that. With new owners at Palmetto Bluff now, just if it was negotiated, I hope it was signed. But I don't think Bluffton ever got wind of that.
yes, ma'am. Robert, can you perhaps get that to her?
Yes, I can. I'll get that together.
I also see our CFO, Tanya Crosby, is on. Ms. Crosby, did you have any questions?
No, I'm just taking it all in, making sure I have the information in my head as I present to further elected bodies and groups. So I just want to learn along with all of you and keep up with the information. But I appreciate you recognizing me. I will have to jump off for another meeting here shortly, but I just wanted to soak it in.
Appreciate you being here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there's no further questions or discussion on this topic, I'd like to move along to the next. Good to go. And I do want to thank all the representatives from the town, Stephen, Heather, Mayor Solka, thank you for joining us and giving us all this information and keeping us updated on, things as they develop and the different data that you're collecting. So we greatly appreciate your partnership and look forward to continuing working with you to deal with any of the growth issues that we may have from the school district side.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel, for always including us.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm
Rachel,
leaving.
do you, just out of curiosity, you think it'd be beneficial for one or us to stay on to hear the conversation that you're about to have, or are we okay to do that?
Yeah, you're perfectly fine to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may just hang on and hear just so we can have a better understanding of what y'all are looking at so we can figure it out together.
Sounds good. Awesome. So moving on to the next item, this is discussion of district development plan for Bluffton's growth. And I asked for this to be added to the agenda the other day. And I certainly can pass the gavel if I need to, but I did just want to have a discussion on the potential for the district to come forward with a development plan and keeping in alignment with the coherent governance model. And we've been having those discussions recently. After we've gone through about 2 years now on this committee, we've gathered a lot of information. We've done visits to schools. We've talked with principals. We've heard from the town now multiple times. So we have the county treasurer coming to speak with us next month. So at this point in time, I think it would be beneficial if we did ask and direct the district to develop a plan. And I personally believe that we should have an option A, B, and perhaps a C of dealing with Bluffton's growth in the future. So I don't know if any other committee members have feedback about that. But I did want to open up the floor for discussion. Dr. Blatz?
Yeah, I concur. I mean, that's the whole idea, I think, of having this committee now for a couple of years. Although I just joined, I certainly listened in a number of times, is, we're gathering information from multiple sources. And that was one of the reasons why we formed this committee. And now we need to utilize that information that we have and come up with solutions and options, as you just described, for how are we going to deal with the growth in this area for our school system. And I think just by listening to the comments, like the mayor tonight, I mean, they want to know, okay, this is happening. We've showed you our stuff, and you showed us your stuff. Now, okay, what's the solution? Where are the schools going to go? Where, what schools? Are we going to have another high school? Are we going to have another elementary school? I know Robert mentioned more than a year ago that we needed certainly another elementary school. When Carol and I visited May River High School this week, the principal there thinks that we're likely to need a new high school very soon. So I do think we have to have a plan. I'll let Angela comment, and then I'd be happy to make a motion.
I agree with the both of you. We do need to have a plan. We have gathered enough information to put it on paper and to have a plan A, B, and C. So I definitely support that.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Robert?
I would just, before you make a motion, I would invite you to look in the facility section of the book that we just put out. The whole concept of putting that together was to give our big picture concepts, our what's important and what we're looking forward to allow for discussion on what the board sees the direction we need to go specifically. So if you have not had the opportunity to look at that yet, I think that's a very good starting point, because we spell out there, we don't talk, we're talking about the district in general, but we do have a section where we're particularly talking about growth. And when we're talking about growth, we're talking about Bluffton. So anything we're spelling out as far as needs for growth, which is a new elementary school, which is a new middle school, which is a new high school, which is new mobiles to get us to the new elementary, new middle, and new high school. That is all in that section. So I would invite you to look at that.
And just to add to that, there's also a conversation in there about early childhood. Should we go to a pre-K for all model? If that comes from within or if that comes from on high, then, you know, what does that mean? And that kind of needs further study as well. So, but it is all laid out there in your facilities master plan. And I don't think we're scheduled to go in front of you as a full board to dive deep in this until March, maybe.
Yep,
So, yeah, we encourage you to read that section.
Dr. Glatz?
I think Robin had her hand up.
Oh.
Did you?
I was going to say also, you were going to have a discussion about feeders and how the feeders work. So would that also fill into how you're going to, what size schools and so forth?
You're in my head, Robin. It's literally written down on my pad right here. I was going to suggest that be incorporated as part of the plan.
Yeah.
Because I know that's obviously new schools are going to impact that. And if we are going to make any changes to those types of items to affect the feeders, then we need to do it probably around the same time. Dr. Glatz?
So, let me think. So probably a good motion would be, I move that the Bluffton Growth Ad Hoc Committee bring forward to the board the need for a district development plan for Bluffton's growth. And we can say in the next 60 days, 90 days, I think we need something there and we don't have the books yet, you know, for me, the actual paper bound one's much easier to use, but I think that's reasonable. Let's say, so we're in the end of January, and so I'd say in the next 90 days.
And can I just chime in? That would give us enough
Sure.
time to get the paperback books that are coming out in February, so we can review those. And then
Exactly.
they are presenting to us in March.
Exactly.
So that would give
So
us.
we're talking, exactly. Well, I guess we shouldn't talk until somebody seconds this.
Oh, okay. I'll second it. I second.
Wait
I just
a
wanted
minute.
to add that. I just have to talk through it to make sure that, you know, I'm on the right track.
So you want to say it again?
Yes,
I move that the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee bring forth to the board a district development plan in the next 90 days.
No, a recommendation
Okay,
that the district
bring
develop.
forth a recommendation.
Yeah. A recommendation that the district bring forth a development plan regarding Bluffton's growth in the next 90 days, because that allows for all these things to happen, I think.
Okay.
and I second it.
I move that the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee bring forth a recommendation. Who's bringing forth, the committee or the board,
Yeah,
or you want the
committee.
district?
The committee.
Okay, I move that the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee bring forth a recommendation.
Or
To the-
recommend to the board. Let's do that.
Recommends.
Bring forth,
That the district bring forth a development plan for Bluffton's growth. That the district bring forth.
that the district bring it or the committee?
The district has to do it. We can't do it.
Okay,
Yeah, so just to be clear, and so I make sure I understand, Dr.
Yeah.
Watt, the intention is to have district staff to bring forward some options to the committee level, and then the committee will bring forward a recommendation to the full board. Is that accurate, or did you want it?
Right, but we don't want them, yes, that's exactly the way I would think of it, but we don't want them working on it. We can't direct them or
Right.
work on the plan. And then what's the board, if the board says, oh no, we don't want them to work on that plan. You know, we want to be sure the board is agreeable to this and then go forth to work on it and then come back to us and exactly.
And
The committee.
I know we have a work session tomorrow, so the next agenda that recommendation would go on would be next Tuesdays. Is that accurate?
It would come out of committee, so it should
Yeah.
come, it would come,
It would come on a regular Tuesday agenda.
yeah.
And that,
All right, so I
Just-
move that the ad
We
hoc
got the ad hoc
Bluffton Growth Committee recommend to the full board that
We
the
got
district bring a
But the district.
a Bluffton growth development plan. In the
Plan,
next-
yeah, exactly.
bring a, okay,
Bring forth, you can say. Yeah, and just broad has to, full, it should be board, you can capitalize
oh, I
it.
have broad, sorry.
Yeah,
And if I may add, I think the intention for, and during the conversation that we have at the full board level, the intention of the plan and the directive would be that district staff would come up with options. So an A, a B, perhaps a C if necessary, but I know Carol mentioned the pre-K for all. So the incorporation of what does that look like in the Bluffton area if we do bring in a PK facility
Yeah.
or a PK through 8, just including all of those different things that need to be considered in whatever plan that we have. I know we've had different options before for various different things like the
All the
referendum.
way up to Z.
so you know,
Thanks,
you know,
Rob.
we could, Rachel, we could say, just bring forth, take out the word A, Bluffton Growth Development Plan options, how's that?
There you go.
Word options right in there.
Just
I think that's better, I agree. Are you good with that, Angela?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Bring forth options. The next page.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
that looks good. I mean, we
Gotta
we
get
want to make it general. We don't want to make it too constricted. And we need this information. The public needs it. The town of Bluffton needs it.
Right.
The school district needs it. We need it. Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
Any other discussion or comments before we take the vote?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
No, ma'am.
Dr. Butts. Philip. Thank you. Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Okay, excuse me.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll bring that forward to the next, at the next board meeting under the committee report. And I think that kind of takes care of also under moving down to future agenda topics. I think that takes care of that item, true feeders, I think. We will see. And we already have a report coming to us at our February meeting. Hopefully, everybody can watch that afterwards. I know there was going to be some attendance issues with that one, but our county treasurer will be bringing forward information on the latest numbers that she has. Anything else for a future agenda topic from anybody? This question?
Carol has her hand.
It's
Yeah.
just more of a clarification. So I've heard you say true feeders twice in talking about a development plan. So to me, a development plan is talking about what do we need? What does that look like? When we get down to feeders, to me, that's sort of the subcategory of once you've kind of developed an option, then you would go to that little deeper dive in saying, you know, what true feeders might potentially look like, and then develop the, you know, attendance zone options. So that would be a step beyond a development plan in my mind. But I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're really asking for.
Yes, ma'am. I think that it needs to just be a consideration. So as you're doing the development plan, that there's still a consideration of how would that potentially impact a feeder pattern or
Gotcha.
for the
Yeah.
future. Just what would the
Yes.
impact be essentially? Dr. Quads?
So, so we have the basically the agenda for the next meeting, and that meeting, I believe you said was going to be February 17th. Is that correct? I just want to confirm the date.
Yes, we moved it to the.
And it will be at 5.
Yes.
Ma'am.
All right. That was my question. Thank you.
Any other topics, comments? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure. I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody. Appreciate your
everyone. Bye.